we discuss key points with Roman Svitan. Roman, good evening, good to see you. Good evening, I wish you all good health. Roman, it's a pleasure to see you. But before we start the conversation, we traditionally call on our dear audience who are now joining this forum. Please give us a like to support Roman Svitan, an analyst, and also write a comment where you can find us. We know that there are a lot of you, so subscribe to this YouTube channel. Because only in this way will the messages we will discuss be able to be heard by as many people as possible. Romania, we start with the president's statements. Zelensky said that the situation on the battlefield opens up serious prospects for ending the war in 2025. Zelensky said, "How did you take this statement personally? What do you think the president is talking about? Is it more about diplomacy, or is it still about military? So far we are running, to put it frankly. Therefore, it is still not clear what the political leadership is talking about."
Политическое руководство, восток Украины, Восточный фронт у нас сыпется практически везде. Каждый день россияне 250-300 метров продвигаются, и до сих пор не видно серьезных подвижек в укреплении восточного направления.
The east of Ukraine is crumbling practically everywhere. Every day the Russians are advancing 250-300 meters. And there is still no progress in strengthening the eastern direction. Our internal troops, the so-called law enforcement agencies, have not been fully operational.
Сейчас вопрос поднимается, чего больше миллиона у нас забронированных, ну то есть попавших под бронь. Вот этот вопрос сейчас у всех.
No civil servants have been put into service, and there is no sign of civil servants joining the Ukrainian Armed Forces on the horizon. This issue has not even been raised. Now another thing is being discussed. More than 1 million people have been booked, that is, exempted from mobilization. This fact is on everyone's lips. More than 1 million people have been booked, with a need of about 100,000 to be put into service. This is probably more of a financial mechanism than creating a professional army. At the moment, I would not say that the situation is positive. It's more negative so far. Perhaps our great politicians know something that we do not know or do not guess. But then we have to ask them, why? Because without the actions I am talking about, without the introduction of motivated personnel, which is about 1 million civil servants, if you count all of them, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the National Guard, the judiciary, etc., the situation will not change. Therefore, there are questions to such statements. So far, they look like a generator of random thoughts. No action is visible.
Пане Романе, до наступних загроз потенційних, тому що в Білорусі вперше за...
A Russian MiG-31K has arrived in Belarus for the first time in a year and a half, landing at Machulishta airfield near Minsk, according to the monitoring group Belarusian Gayan. In view of the fact that this Vinishuvech is a carrier for the Dagger hypersonic missile, in your opinion, is the Russian Federation able to use the airspace of Belarus for shelling? The opportunity is definitely there. Let us assume that Dagger penetrates the entire territory of Ukraine. If it is launched from Kursk, Bryansk, or Belgorod regions, as well as from Voronezh, it reaches the western outskirts of our country. That is, in principle, they do not need to launch missiles from the territory of Belarus to fulfill this kind of tasks. It will reach any point from the east. Perhaps this airplane is needed to reduce the flight time, for example, to Khmelnytsky, Rivne, Lviv, and western borders. It may also be aimed at bypassing the interception zone of Kinzhal missiles near Kiev.
Нужен, да и кинжал в том числе, нужен для того, чтобы с Республики Беларусь запускать, естественно, для того, чтобы уменьшить подлетное время. допустим, до Хмельницка, до Львова, до Ровно, ну, то есть до западных границ. И облететь, допустим, зону перехвата кинжалов в районе Киева. То есть Киев, Киевская область.
Kiev and the Kiev region are under Patriot cover, which have already intercepted the daggers, as we have seen. Such a mechanism is possible, but then there will be serious questions about Lukashenko and his regime. If it is possible to use Belarusian airspace to launch daggers and people die, it will raise serious questions about Lukashenko and the entire occupation administration of Belarus. The Western press increasingly discusses the possibility of a coup in Ukraine if a peace deal with Russia is reached, with Forbes highlighting this. It's clear that Putin has been aiming for a coup since the war began, using energy terror and other tactics to further this goal. I'd like to hear your analysis on this situation. So your analytics. Don't you consider this article to be an adaptation of the Russian narrative? No, it's more of a statement of a possible future, but not a coup d'etat. Why not? Because in order to flip something, you have to at least have it. We are talking about the fact that if any peace agreements are signed with the Russian Federation while the Russian army is on Ukrainian territory, it will be a surrender. Any peace agreement, if an occupier soldier is on your territory, is a surrender.
Капитуляционное соглашение, то, в принципе, все эти подписанты, они поедут просто в...
So, if a surrender agreement is signed, all these signatories will go to Rostov and will not return to Ukraine. We already have one of them sitting there, Yanukovych, since 2014. They will go there, and no one will turn anything over. Why? How many of those signatories will there be? How many were there, let's say on March 27, 2022 in Istanbul? Key figures like Umerov, Arahamia, Podolyak, and Reznikov would sign any surrender and travel to Rostov. This means there will be no coup or upheaval. Those involved will simply leave and not return to Ukraine, resulting in no significant changes for us.
В этих операциях, и их просто в Украину не вернутся. Потому для нас, в принципе, ничего не изменится. У нас довольно-таки устойчивое общество сейчас, которое...
We have a fairly stable society, which believes in the main force, the law enforcers, the armed forces of Ukraine. The armed forces of Ukraine will fulfill their constitutional duty, the oath they took to the people of Ukraine, not to the signatories, not to the chancellery, not to the president, not to the Verkhovna Rada, not to the government.
Давали присягу сохранять суверенитет и территориальную целостность. То есть вооруженные силы Украины будут выполнять свои боевые задачи.
They took an oath to the people of Ukraine to preserve their sovereignty and territorial integrity, and they will carry out their combat tasks. And these comrades will simply leave. That is, there will be no coup as such. The stability of society, the stability of relations between the security forces and society, as well as the constitutional mechanisms of the transfer of power in our country, will not make it possible to carry out a coup. Even Maidan in 2014 eventually sent the president to Rostov, but the governability remained through the Verkhovna Rada. We have a parliamentary presidential republic, and the parliament will take over the reins of power. The chairman of the Verkhovna Rada with truncated powers will perform the tasks of governing the state until some positions are restored. That is all. There will be no coup. There is no need to be afraid of it. We encourage our viewers to share their thoughts in the chat during our broadcast and let us know where they're watching from. Last night, there were many nice comments from various cities and countries, including Ireland and Saudi Arabia, expressing gratitude for the analysis and support for Ukraine. We also received messages from viewers in Israel and Poland.
Героям слава. Добрий вечір, Херсонка з Ізраїлю. Дякую за ефір. Далі коментар слушаю постійно з Польщі.
They wrote from Kharkov. Thank you. And a lot of people really wrote from Germany and Ukraine, especially from Cherkashina. We are very grateful to you for your activity. If you have any questions for Roman, you can write them under the broadcast on YouTube. Romani, let's move on to what's happening on the battlefield. The press officer of the 28th Independent Mechanized Brigade, Evgen Yelkamov, reported that Russian occupants near Toretsk are using the RBU-6000 rocket bomb, also known as Smerch-2, against the defense forces. This system is known as one designed to destroy the enemy's water supplies. What else do you know about this bomber? And can it be regarded as evidence of a deficit of a certain type of armor among the occupants, since they are already pulling to the front line a bomber designed to destroy submersibles and torpedoes?
Россияне креативят буквально с первых дней боевых действий, даже с 2014 года. То есть здесь им не откажешь в этой креативности.
The Russians have shown creativity since the first days of hostilities in 2014, even using T-34 tanks from monuments in battle. They have deployed various equipment, including World War II models like the IS-1 and T-34, across the Donetsk region. It's likely they will eventually remove all remaining T-34s from their pedestals throughout Russia. It is not unusual for them to use equipment designed for one theater of war in another. Such use of weapons indicates that the Russians are running out of standard means of defeat. As we have discussed earlier, they will have a serious arms shortage at the end of the year.
Наблюдаем, но такое использование говорит как раз о том, что у россиян под конец, мы как-то с вами говорили об этом, под конец года уже будет серьезный дефицит.
That is why they started using even the S-300 as ballistic missiles from the first days of fighting. They do not have enough ballistic missiles and means of defeat on the battlefield. As a result, they are using naval means of defeat, pulling even ships' guns, machine guns, and air defense systems to the front. They are trying to adapt the entire available range of weapons for combat operations. This once again confirms that they have a shortage of conventional weapons.
Но это, еще раз повторю, говорит о том, что у них штатных средств поражения уже ощущается дефицит.
Пане Романе, Німеччина доставила в Україну чергову батарею IRIS-T SLM, додатково 2 пускові установки для протиповітряної оборони. Про це переконує німецьке видання.
Germany has delivered a second IRIS-T SLM battery and 2 additional anti-missile defense launchers to Ukraine. How would you assess our overall air defense capabilities? What are your forecasts for this winter? Will we manage positively, negatively, or somewhere in between? Also, is there still a concern about a missile deficit for air defense? Germany is helping us a lot. Germany is providing Ukraine with everything it can, including excellent air defense systems like the Cheetah and IRIS-T. While there are still questions about the Tauruses, I believe we will reach that point eventually.
Ну а системы противовоздушной обороны немецкие, конечно, они очень хорошие, причем те, которые с прошлого тысячелетия мы используем, начиная с Гепарда. Гепард — это уже притча во языках. Отличная зенитка. И заканчивая...
German designers went the right way. They did not bother with a new missile, but took the existing air-to-air missile. This is the main missile for European airplanes, used by the entire spectrum of aircraft.
Самолетов, которые используются практически всем спектром европейских самолетов. IRIS-T неплохая ракета.
IRIS-T is not a bad missile, It's been adapted for the ground complex, have seriously refined the radar, which can see well and are being used to destroy Russian air targets. This approach is correct because there are many Iris-T missiles and they are being actively produced. Any airborne missiles are immediately put into mass production because they are consumables. There won't be a problem with missile availability, as Iris-T performs well in this regard, despite the missiles being expensive. The only thing to understand is that is a short-range missile. Its range is about 20 kilometers, in some cases up to 40 kilometers. But these are still short ranges. However, despite this, the complex performs its tasks with very high efficiency. Iris-T is almost 100% effective against Russian targets. It is probably the only complex of all the ones we have that gives almost 100% results. It has significantly strengthened our air defense density, and more than a dozen such complexes are already performing combat missions. I think that the range and nomenclature of the complexes will be expanded in the future. Iris-T is particularly effective when paired with long-range systems such as Patriot or SAMP-T. They complement each other and practically 100% cover the object they protect. At the moment, this complex is well used by Army units not only as an object air defense system, but also at the level of Army-scale SAMs. Roman, today we discussed the Russian MiG-31K aircraft, and now I'd like to address the Telegraph article about the Su-57 stealth aircraft, which states that the Russian Federation has to suspend production of these fifth-generation jets. Production is being halted due to sanctions. It is noteworthy that the rate of delivery of new Su-57 seems to have dropped significantly between 2023 and 2024. As a matter of fact, these rates of delivery of new types of Shivas increase from year to year for Lagatorshny contracts, as employees gain experience and optimize production processes. The Telegraph reports. In your opinion, can similar problems arise with other vaporizers that the Russians use? And how are Su-57s used by the Russians now? Are they used at all? The Su-57 is as far from a fifth-generation airplane as the Pope is from a fifth-generation airplane, as they say. These sins are related to the sanctions pressure on the Su-57. Moreover, the Japanese started this pressure almost a dozen years ago, when the Russians started requesting composites from Japanese companies for domestic consumption. When Japanese manufacturers, and most likely Japanese intelligence, realized that these composites would be used for the production of Su-57, they stopped supplying them. Composites are low surface area radio reflective materials that are used to build aircraft, and not only, they are also used for surface and ground vehicles in low reflection technologies.
Не получился самолет пятого поколения, как минимум по радиоотражению, эффективная площадь рассеивания большая.
The Japanese were the first to stop supplying composites to the Russians, and they have failed to create a fifth-generation airplane, at least in terms of radio deflection. It glows like a Christmas tree on the air. In addition, they have never been able to develop an engine that would meet the requirements of the fifth generation. They also failed to develop a helmet with a 360-degree view. Thus, it is not a fifth-generation airplane, and that is a fact, because the Su-57 does not meet the tactical and technical requirements of the fifth generation. All the countries that were previously in line for this airplane have rejected it. Moreover, the Russian army will also refuse it because it is very expensive, and its TTCs do not meet expectations. In essence, it is a well-painted Su-35. The Su-35, Su-34, and Su-30 are solid aircraft at the 4+ or 4++ level, but the Su-57 is essentially similar to them, just more expensive. Now it is being pressured by sanctions, especially those imposed in the last 2 years, and this is slowing down production even more. I think the Russian defense industry will put an end to the Su-57, and no one will export it either. For domestic consumption, this airplane is too expensive and useless. The Su-75, which was planned as the next version for export, will most likely not be produced either. Russia will focus on the production of Su-34 and Su-35, but being under sanctions, they will face the fact that some of the specifications of these aircraft will be reduced because they cannot produce their own element base. The gray schemes are slowly closing down, which means that they will buy Chinese equipment. But Chinese equipment is, pardon the expression, yuck, and it is impossible to make anything sensible on this basis. Roman, you have a question about airplanes. Last night we were discussing images, and now our viewers are writing to us. Stanislava, we welcome you. Thank you for writing. Good evening, Prague on the phone. What are the prospects of getting the full range of armor to the announced French aircraft, which will be transferred to us instead of F-16s, but not as a substitute for F-16s, but in addition to them? Yes, most likely, because the F-16s will not be delivered to us in full. They just can't do it fast enough. Naturally, it was decided to supply Mirages, and this is also due to the lack of airplanes that can carry equipment that we already have. Storm Shadow, Scalps, Humvees. We do not have many Su-24s, about 1 squadron, which is currently carrying out the task. So at the very least, there could be 1.5 or 2 squadrons of Mirages. There will be such a common brigade. I think there will be a prefabricated brigade, so-called, of Su-24s and Mirages, which will perform a combat mission depending on the weapons that will be transferred to us. At a minimum, we can count on the fact that we already have Scalps, Storm Shadow, and Su-24s, and Mirages can pick them up, fulfill the combat mission. Well, naturally, the Humvees, I mean the ones that are already operational, it's a planning aerial bomb. Although the Mirage is undergoing modernization right now, to fulfill the tasks of working on ground targets, mainly, i.e. it's the Mirage 2000 Cat 5, it was basically designed for ground operations. Therefore, I think just the ground-based air-to-ground weapons will be the main ones. That is, they will be missiles, mainly Maveriks. I think they are already being installed in this Mirage. Well, a wide range of different levels of aerial bombs, guided, free-falling, which this airplane will do quite well with. Optimally, there are some good anti-ship missiles that this airplane can carry. I think it would be optimal, of course, to transfer at least 1 squadron to the Naval Aviation Department. That is, to make it a Naval Aviation Squadron, to transfer it to the Department of our Naval Forces to control the waters of the Black Sea. There are enough missiles, the Mirage can work with them. Roman, thank you for this conversation, your analysis, your answers. Roman Svitan, instructor pilot of the Ukrainian Army Reserve, answers the most important questions every day. Vladyslav Solovyov, Olga Bilan, give this video a like, write a comment. Where are you watching us from? Also subscribe to this YouTube channel, and we'll see you on 24.